We all know we're supposed to love our neighbor. But what about that neighbor? The one who tests your patience, pushes your buttons, parks in your spot? In this series, we'll talk about how to deal with difficult people without losing your patience, your values, or your sense of humor. Because Jesus didn't say, love your neighbor unless they're annoying. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, welcome to the first week of our series called Love Your Neighbor, Even That One. We all have people in our lives who love, support, and encourage us, family members who are with us through thick and thin, friends we're excited to see and spend time with, coworkers who make us laugh and carry us through the day with their humor. But people can also frustrate you, make you feel angry and bitter, even hurt you in ways that cut deep. Sometimes people will push you to the very edge. It's tempting to shut everyone else out, go it alone, stick to yourself, but that only leads to loneliness and isolation. Instead, what you have to do is learn how to navigate the gauntlet of difficult, demanding, and troublesome people in your life and still find peace and joy in spite of them. In this series, we're going to walk through 5 real-world struggles involving other people and how Jesus teaches us to respond with grace, wisdom, and love. Today, we're going to tackle the first of those struggles. I want to talk to you today about when people define you. We live in a world where a lot of people determine value based on appearance, status, wealth, success. There's a lot of pressure to keep up appearances, drive the right kind of car, wear the most stylish, fashionable clothes, live in a nice house, work at a high-paying job. But when you let other people define who you are and what's important to you, it's easy to start feeling like you're not enough, like you don't measure up, And that's a terrible feeling. But here's the key. They don't define who you are. They can't assign your value. They can't determine your worth. They don't control your destiny. Only God does. But when you let other people tell you what you should or should not believe, when you let them determine what you should like or not like, what you should do or not do, who you should follow or not follow, you not only lose your own sense of identity, but you can slip into bad habits, compromise your integrity, and even become someone you don't even recognize in extreme cases. Whether it's because of social expectations, peer pressure, or just insecurity, it's easy to pretend, try to keep up appearances, try to impress, keep up your own image, strive and strain to look good, get ahead of the other guy, accumulate more and more wealth and possessions just to win the approval of others. This is what Jesus was warning his followers about in today's gospel. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist in possessions." Now, Jesus could have handled it a different way. He could have taken a different approach. He could have tried to settle the argument between the two brothers. Encourage them to compromise, get along, play nice. He could have listened to the facts of the case and made a decision, rendered a decision, and advised them how to split the inheritance. But instead, he used the dispute as an opportunity to teach something fundamentally important about relationships. He was saying that greed isn't just a personal problem. It's a relational problem. It doesn't just hurt you on the inside, it hurts the people around you, the people God put in your life to love. In the scripture, Jacob and Esau were born. They were twins. Esau came out first, but Jacob was grabbing at his heels, trying to get ahead of Esau. Why? Because back then, When the father eventually passed away, it was the firstborn son who would get a double inheritance, a double portion of the inheritance, and authority to rule over the entire family. And that's what Jacob wanted. But Esau was the first to come out. And so he got this blessing. It's called a birthright. And all his life, Jacob wanted that birthright. He wanted to outdo Esau. He wanted to get ahead of Esau. And one day when Esau came in from the fields, he was exhausted, he was starving, he was hungry. He asked for something to eat. Jacob saw an opportunity not to help, but to profit. Instead of giving his brother something to eat free of charge and with no strings attached, he demanded Esau's birthright in exchange. Esau was so hungry, so tired, he wasn't thinking straight and agreed to the trade. Well, many years later, when Isaac, their father, was very old, blind, and close to death, Jacob disguised himself, pretended to be Esau, went in to see his father. By mistake, Isaac gave Jacob the birthright and the blessing that was intended for Esau. And when Esau found out, he was furious. Scripture says he bore Jacob a grudge because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, when the time of mourning for my father has come, I will kill my brother Jacob. This is what can happen to relationships when greed gets out of control. Jacob was constantly trying to get ahead of Esau and outdo him. He was driven by greed and ambition, and in the end, it cost him his own brother. Esau was now after him and determined to take revenge. But greed doesn't just create or cause problems between people, like the two brothers in the gospel, like with Jacob and Esau. It also works the other way around. When there's already conflict and tension in the relationship, when you feel hurt, overlooked, unappreciated, under pressure, it's easy to reach for the wrong things. When you feel insecure on the inside, worried about what other people will think, letting them define who you are, it can easily lead to greed. This is what happened to me. When I was 16, I got my first car, a 1976 Ford Pinto. It was a hand-me-down from my grandmother when she couldn't drive anymore. And there were several issues with that car. Okay, first, there were a lot of dents and dings and scratches. Apparently, my grandmother wasn't a very good driver, kept crashing into things, having these minor accidents. Second, and this didn't really bother me at all, there was an unresolved safety issue. Just a little thing where, the whole car would explode if someone hit me from behind. No big deal, really. But third, and most important to me, was the fact that that car was baby blue, inside and out. Now, no offense to anybody here, but that may have been fine to us for a 75-year-old grandma from Detroit, but for a teenage boy trying to, project a macho, tough guy image, that just didn't work, did it? I mean, you see my problem here. Now, of course, I was very grateful for the free wheels, but I kept dreaming about owning something a little more stylish, something like a fire engine red 325i BMW with, wait for it, gold stripes down each side. I love that car. It's beautiful, isn't it? That's me driving in my dreams, I wanted that car more than anything else. I would do anything to get it. That's why I worked so hard as a dishwasher at the Sizzler down the road. It's why I travailed at a seafood restaurant in our local area as their salad boy, which, by the way, is a very humiliating job title, don't you think? I mean, if you ask me. And third, it's why I labored all through high school at a dry cleaner's, just so one day I might be able to afford that dream car. Why? Because I wanted to impress other people. I wanted to elevate my status among my peers and win their approval. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with owning a nice car if that's what you want. But for me, I was just trying to impress everybody else. I was letting them define what was important to me, how I should spend my money by getting a nice car. I was being influenced by other people, and they were defining me, and the greed took over. It consumed my life. Well, in the end, I never got that car, and after so much striving and straining, it just never worked out. The problem with greed is that it never makes things better. In fact, just the opposite. When you try to impress other people, and we've all met people like this, right? Desperately showing off how much they have and how good they have it, making it sound like a humble brag, right? It just turns you off, doesn't it? It has the opposite effect, and it results in loneliness and depression. When you always have to be the king of the hill, more likely than not, you'll find yourself standing at the top of that mountain all by yourself. This is what happened to the man in the gospel story today, the parable that Jesus told. He had run out of storage. He had so many nice things, his storeroom was out of room. Now, instead of taking a note off the page of Marie Kondo, spending a weekend and going through all his things, excess things, decluttering, keeping only those things which sparked joy, he took a different route. He decided to build a much bigger barn so he could hoard even more. God called this man a fool because soon he would die and he would have nothing of consequence to show for his life. First reading puts it this way: vanity of vanities. For what profit comes to a man from all his toil and anxiety of heart with which he has labored under the sun? All his days, sorrow and grief are his occupation. Even at night, his mind is not at rest, always trying to think of more and more ways to get more and to have more. In this case, the man was concerned only with himself. Did you notice this? He kept saying things like, my grain, my barns, my harvest. He was greedy and self-absorbed. And he was lonely, so consumed with accumulating more and more wealth and possessions so that one day he could feel secure. One day he could rest and say to himself, eat, drink, and be merry. But there's no mention in the story of anyone to share all those nice things with. No friends, no family, not even the poor. One day this man would die, and God would want to know, the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? All his life, this man kept piling up more and more stuff, but in the end, he didn't even have someone to leave it to when he passed away. Greed may have built that bigger barn, but it also built the walls that kept everyone else out. When you let other people define you and always trying to meet their expectations and please them and get their approval, it just goes nowhere. It leads to bad things like greed and pushes people away. But when you do the opposite, when you do the right thing, when you set the right priorities, when you set aside greed, good things happen. A man came to see me recently about a difficult family situation. Years ago, his father bought a piece of property when he was married to his first wife, this man's mother. Later, he remarried, and then much later, he passed away, and the house went to his second wife. But then, when she died, instead of passing it on to her husband's children, she left it to her own children from a prior marriage. And you can imagine the fallout from that decision. Hurt feelings, relatives not speaking, tension filling the air. The wound lingered for years. Now, this man who came to see me is a good man. He's a faithful man. He comes here to St. Hilary all the time. Good and faithful man, and he's a man of prayer, and so he prayed about this, not for a day or a week or a month, but months and months and months, what he should do, because he knew in his heart something wasn't right. And he knew also, he told me, it's not about the money. It's the principle that matters. This isn't what my father would have wanted. But he struggled, because if he stayed silent, he would be going against what he knew in his heart was right. But if he spoke up, he risked creating even further conflict in the family. Finally, he decided to write a respectful but honest letter to his relatives. Not confrontational, not demanding, just sharing his heart. He didn't expect anything in return, not even a reply. But several weeks later, he got one. And guess what? They agreed with everything he said. They promised that when the house was finally sold, he would get his fair share. He told me, in the end, it's probably, after taxes and fees, it's probably not worth all that much. And then he said, but that's not the point. The real blessing is I got my family back. Sometimes the greatest gain is not in the money, it's in the healing. And what this family knew, and I wish every family knew, was that the relationships are far more important than the real estate. After years of hurt and betrayal and looking over his shoulder and always being on the run, Jacob finally came face to face with his older brother Esau. He expected anger, revenge, even violence. But instead, Esau came running towards him, arms open, happy to see him, ready to greet him. He didn't come to fight, he came to forgive. And Jacob was so relieved. He started offering all these gifts to Esau, just, trying to make things right, these expensive gifts. But Esau said, no, brother, I'm fine. I got everything I need. Jacob insisted. Esau accepted some of the gifts. And then he offered his little brother some help and protection. And Jacob said, no, brother, I'm doing okay too. No need. See, both brothers were fighting to give, not to get. They were both trying to be a blessing to each other. The greed had finally come to an end. And because of that, the relationship was restored. That's how you know healing has happened. That's how you know you're being true to yourself. Because greed, like every other negative quality, is a form of self-betrayal. It comes from the unhealthy desire to want to please other people, prove yourself, get what they have, and so on and so on. But when you stop letting other people define who you are, then you'll have the freedom to love them for who they are, from a place not of insecurity, but from a source of strength. When you can turn off the compare and despair mindset, you'll turn on greater, deeper, fuller, more fulfilling, more meaningful, more lasting, more perfect love for your neighbor. And yes, even that one.